It's midnight. The house is quiet. Everyone else is asleep. You finally sit down to pray. Maybe you set an alarm. Maybe you promised yourself you would start taking your prayer life more seriously. You close your eyes. And then something strange happens. Your mind goes blank. No deep words, no powerful prayer. And after a few seconds, you start feeling uncomfortable. You begin to wonder, am I doing this wrong? A lot of people experience this, but almost no one talks about it. Because we've been taught that prayer should always sound powerful, like something you hear in church. Long sentences, perfect words, strong emotions. But real prayer doesn't always look like that. Sometimes the most honest moment in prayer is when you simply don't know what to say. And when that moment happens at midnight, there is one simple prayer you can start with. Pray for sinners. It might sound unexpected. Most people come to midnight prayer with a list. They pray about their problems, their finances, their future, their struggles with discipline, motivation, or fear. And those prayers matter. But there is something powerful that happens when your first prayer is not about yourself. It's about someone who is far from God. Because the truth is, God deeply cares about lost souls. In fact, Jesus made this very clear. In Luke chapter 15, verse 7, he said, "There is more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need repentance." Heaven celebrates when someone who is lost finds their way back to God. And when you pray for sinners, you are praying about something that matters deeply to God. Now, here's something interesting that many people don't realize. When you start praying for sinners regularly, your heart begins to change. You begin to feel compassion. You start looking at people differently. That friend who keeps making destructive decisions, that coworker who mocks faith, that family member who refuses to listen when you talk about God. Instead of feeling irritated, you begin to feel concern for their soul. And that shift is powerful. And something else begins to happen too when you begin to pray for sinners. You begin to realize how much mercy God has shown you. Because the truth is, none of us started perfect. Every believer has a past, mistakes, regrets, moments we wish we could erase. Romans chapter 5, verse 8 says, "While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Think about that. God loved us before we improved, before we became disciplined, before we cleaned up our lives. And when you start praying for people who are far from God, you remember that you once needed that same mercy. That realization keeps your heart humble. It reminds you that grace is not something we earned. It was given. And here's something else that happens quietly when you pray for sinners. Your anger toward people begins to soften. We live in a time where it's easy to judge others. Social media makes it even easier. You see people living in ways that go against your values, and the natural reaction is frustration. But when you start praying for someone, it becomes harder to hate them. Prayer changes your perspective. You stop seeing people as problems. You start seeing them as souls. People who are lost, people who are hurting, people who may have never experienced the love of God. Jesus showed this mindset constantly. He spent time with people that religious leaders avoided, tax collectors, outcasts, sinners. Not because he supported sin, but because he cared about redemption. And when your midnight prayers begin to reflect that same heart, something begins to grow inside you. A deeper kind of compassion. Now, here's the part many people don't expect. When you begin showing compassion through your prayers, God often begins working in your own life in powerful ways. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." Mercy has a way of coming back, not because prayer is a transaction, but because your heart begins to align with God's heart. And when that alignment happens, your spiritual life becomes more genuine, less performance, more relationship. Instead of trying to sound spiritual, you simply talk to God. Sometimes it's just a few honest sentences. God, please open their eyes. Help them find their way back to you. Show them your love. That's enough. Prayer was never meant to be complicated. It was meant to be real. So the next time you wake up for midnight prayer and your mind goes blank, don't panic. Don't force words. Just begin here. Pray for sinners. Begin praying for the people in your city. Pray for someone you know who feels far from God. Pray for the friend who stopped believing. Pray for the person who feels too ashamed to return to church. Just start there. And tonight, before you sleep, try something simple. Take one quiet minute. Close your eyes and say, "Jesus, please show mercy to those who don't know you yet. Help them find their way back." You don't need perfect words, just a sincere heart. Start with that tonight.